Hello. So we're going to start up in about 1 minute, but I wanted to start welcoming you. We've got a couple people here in the office with us, and we've got, I think, a few online, or we will soon. And there'll be a bunch of people who watch it over time. So, yeah, get your popcorn, or maybe your garbanzo beans or something. Settle down, and your kefir. And we'll give you some great information tonight. I think you're going to be able to really apply and enjoy. All right.
Let me get you a seat. Let me get you a seat. Wow.
So we're live, just so you know. Okay, so 5:30, we're going to start up now. Tonight, we're talking about the gut-brain connection. And I'm going to switch, for those of you online, I'll switch screens so you can see up close sometimes. Sometimes you'll see me here, so I'll be trying to get my little switch on my hip here so you can see things. There's up close where you see me real small, and then sometimes I might just show you the whole screen. Okay, so gut-brain connection. And then we're talking about healing the gut-brain connection, because we don't want to just tell you about it. I want you to have some action steps that can transform your health. And things like autoimmune disorder, dementia, irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, fatigue, hormones, chronic illness, these are all associated with this gut-brain connection. And it started long ago, right? We're like, I just have this gut feeling. And now we're realizing that there really is this connection to the brain from our gut. And there's a lot more to it than we thought. Alrighty, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. Family chiropractor since 1990, I thought it said 66. I'm like, wow, not that long. Since 96, so 30 years now. Focus on nervous system and chronic health issues. Oh yeah, by the way, my wife reminds me, you know this picture is like 25 years old. Maybe you should put up a new one. On most of my presentations I do have one, but yep. So look, I was a little chubbier. I'm like trimmed up now. And a few less wrinkles. Anyway, focus on nervous system health and chronic health issues. And so that's why I became board certified in chiropractic neurology. So what is that? Think of a medical neurologist. What do they do versus a regular family practitioner? Well, they focus on the brain and the nervous system function. So that's what I do as well, but not with drugs and surgery. We're looking for ways to promote health and healing as opposed to just focusing on disease. We want to prevent disease, and sometimes we even can reverse disease, but our focus really is promoting health, and those things happen as a side effect, which is kind of cool. Certified in functional medicine, that's where we use nutrition and lifestyle. We do lab testing, check for deficiencies, toxicities, gut health, and we'll talk about that a little bit more tonight. And lecturer and member of the Interdisciplinary Association of Functional Neurology and Rehabilitation. Wow, so that's a mouthful. If you can say it 3 times fast, you get to join. Anna's almost got it. So, no. It's where a bunch of different practitioners from different professions get together and go, how can we use our understanding of the nervous system that's a lot like a muscle? It needs to be properly nourished, properly exercised. Sometimes it needs to be isolated, specific parts of it, and rehabilitated. How can we use that information to help people recover from all sorts of neurological ailments? And the reason we get such amazing results in our office is because we have a different approach. And that approach is characterized by this term salutogenesis, which comes from the Latin saluto, which means health, and genesis, the creation of. So if we're going to help you get healthy, we have to focus on factors that create health in your body and not those that create disease, because no amount of focusing on disease is ever going to help you get healthy. It will help you stay alive, and we're actually really good at that, not in our office, although we try to keep people alive too. But as far as a medical system, right, we're really good at keeping people alive. And it's really, let's keep people dying for 20 years. That's kind of how it works, right? Whereas, as opposed to keeping them healthy. So they die for the last 20 years of their life. It's like, let's just die really quickly. Let's not die for a long time. But while we're alive, let's be really healthy and be able to do what we want to do. All right, so we're going to help you do that tonight. Let's start with a little story. And this story is about a 4-week-old baby. And mom came in, and mom and dad, and they said it's been 4 weeks and he has only had 2 unassisted bowel movements. They didn't let him leave the hospital for like 24 hours because he hadn't had a bowel movement. And finally he did, but then we had 1 more over the next 2 weeks that was unassisted. And they had this cool thing. They had a sleep monitor that would measure the baby, and this is a version of it, that would measure the baby's movements. And so you could see how the baby shouldn't be really moving much because they should be sleeping. And if they're rattling around all the time, then that means they're irritable, they're irritated, and they're not sleeping well. And so it gives you either a blue or a red. Red was there's lots of movement and not sleeping well, and blue was lots of good sleep. And they said the sleep monitor was showing all red lines, meaning he was not sleeping. And that was kind of a bummer. And so I treated the baby, and I'll show you actually how that treatment goes later. I've got a little video of treating a baby. And it's not what you would imagine if you haven't seen a baby being treated before by a chiropractor. So anyway, after spinal adjustments, the sleep monitor lines are all blue, and he's having normal bowel movements every 2 days. So that was pretty cool. And it was nice that they had documented on this little device where they could, and they saw the lines get better even before the bowel movement started. They're like, well, he hasn't had a bowel movement yet. This is after a day or 2. He came back. But all the lines are blue, which meant the baby was sleeping. So, which means mom and dad were sleeping. So that was cool. So gut health affects us even at a very young age, and it affects sleep, and it affects lots of other health issues. So was that a spine problem? Was it a brain problem? Or was it a nervous system problem? Well, yeah, you'll learn tonight. Anna already knows. All right, so we pull our information from things like this. These are the GAP syndrome, gut and psychology syndrome, the mind-gut connection, some latest research from different journals. So I'll give you references for everything, so much that you will get weary and tired of all the references. But things I'm going to share tonight are not just my opinion, so they're backed up by research. So I think some of you will enjoy that quite a bit. All right, so what is my story? So this is me when I was about 9 years old. These are my brothers, conniving some way to make my life miserable. And look, he just looks so sweet. So I actually love my brothers. We get along great, but we didn't always get along great. So yeah, I was happy, healthy, loving life, and unless I wasn't. This is me in the hospital. I spent Christmas in the hospital. Who does that, right? And I remember at least 2 Christmases that I was sick in bed. This is one of them. I didn't even get to be sick in my own bed. 2 Christmases. If you're sick on Christmas, right, you know you're sick. And that was 2 of them. So you can imagine how often I was sick if I was sick on 2 Christmases. That's okay. They're taking care of me. I've got my 7-Up and other good food to revive me and keep me healthy. I still remember one of the presents I got that Christmas. I don't have it still. It was this goes to the food issue again, right? This was a Reese's Pieces piggy bank kind of box thing. It's pretty special. All right. So I was sick, and my sickness affected me. And I wasn't always in bed sick. I was a pretty active kid, but this is illustrating some disabilities I had. I could not read very well. I could make out the words, I could read out loud, but I couldn't stay awake. I would fall asleep, and I started staying up until midnight when I was in junior high to finish my homework. It's like, who does that? In fact, my mom and dad, they went to the school counselor and they said, do you think there might be something wrong with our kid? He's staying up till midnight. And they said no. So I was really motivated to do well, but I had trouble doing well. So anyway, so I dealt with issues. And I certainly had gut issues as well. So this is my son and I hiking. And this is my daughter, our dog Blue, giving me a lick. And this is my wife over at the beach. So we love going out and doing stuff. All right. So this is how we're going to organize tonight's presentation. We're going to talk about what's going on, what is the present state of this gut-brain connection or dysfunction. And then why? Why is it so bad? Because we're going to share how it is bad. And then, what's the cause? And then finally, what's next? Because really what we want to get around to is some solutions. But first, I'm going to drag you through the mud and help you understand all the misery, because it's not just you, and it's not just the thing you have. This is a bigger picture. So what's the impact of autoimmune disorders? Well, so this is specific autoimmune. What is autoimmune? That's when your body attacks itself. 50 million Americans have autoimmune disorder. There are over 100 autoimmune diseases, over 300% increase in multiple autoimmune conditions over the past several decades. 75% more prevalent in women than men, poor women, and $100 billion a year. There's a lot of money, a lot of suffering on our bodies attacking themselves. What is up with this? Well, anytime I see an immune issue, I think gut first. Because, why?
Because
the gut's connected to the brain. And the brain is in control of everything. And 80% of the immune system is around the gastrointestinal tract. So if you've got an immune problem, look to the gut first. While 1 in 69 women below the ages of 50 will be diagnosed with breast cancer, as many as 1 in 9 of childbearing years will be diagnosed with an autoimmune illness. This is a big deal. Over 100 different autoimmune disorders. There's the category, thyroid, there's thyroiditis, Hashimoto's, Graves. So I'll just give you one, Hashimoto's. If you got Hashimoto's disease, what is that? Well, that's autoimmunity to your thyroid causing low thyroid production, low thyroid function. What do we always look for if we've got a thyroid problem, autoimmune thyroid? Goiter. Goiter is, that would be a different one. That's not autoimmune. Because it could be related, but generally it's not. It's a deficiency. So we look for gut problems, right? Anytime it's autoimmune, we look for gut. But specifically in this case, gluten. Now, gluten sensitivity is kind of a fad, but there are some real conditions that are associated with gluten sensitivity. Peripheral neuropathy, of course, celiac disease, thyroid, and skin. There's one not here. It's called dermatitis herpetiformis. Those are all caused by gluten sensitivity. So if someone has Hashimoto's, definitely we want to check, and that means they've checked antibodies. Definitely we want to go on and check gluten sensitivity, not just celiac, but other gluten sensitivities. All right. So anyway, there's a lot of autoimmunity going on. Anxiety, most common mental illness in the United States. 57 million adults, 19% of U.S. adult population. In 2007. A lot of people dealing with anxiety. Depression is the number 1 to 2 cause of disability worldwide. And extensive research is now linking depression to the gut-brain axis dysfunction, and we'll talk about that gut-brain connection. 42% of high school students feeling sad and hopeless in 2021. Well, maybe that's because they didn't let them go to school, right? So that was part of it. Yeah, there's a lot of problems. So that's depression. Depression, anxiety in children. 1 in 6 children aged 2 to 8 years old has a mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. Depression and anxiety have increased over time from 5% to 8% over 9 years. Is it more diagnosis? Is it better diagnosis? Is it people being more messed up? It's probably a combination.
I think it's more messed up.
Yeah. All right, dementia in numbers, 42% of 55-year-olds will develop dementia by 95 years old. This is in 2020, 2030. This is the number of people, estimated number of people who will get dementia each year, right? And so in 2060, well, that's a long ways away. Let's go back to 2040 or 2030, expecting 700,000 people a year in the U.S. to get dementia. And if you're 55, you're 42% of the people who are 55 years old will get dementia by the time they're 95. Now, of course, a lot of them won't live that long, so they don't have to worry about it. But if your brain's working well, you kind of want to live long, right? You want to use your body. All right, so what is all this? I've been talking about all kinds of different mental conditions especially, but also autoimmune conditions. 43% or 34 million school-age children have at least one of 20 chronic health conditions. And that does not even include being overweight, obese, or developmental delays, which of course is what you think of when you think of childhood problems. That's not even including those. So we're looking at a health problem, not just a mental problem or not just a gut problem. It's an overall body problem. It's a health problem. We need to focus not on disease. We got that figured out. We know how to find disease and name disease. We need to focus on those factors that create health in the body. And we know a lot of those answers already, right? If we just did what we know, we'd be a lot healthier than we are. Chronic illness is winning because we're spending a lot of money on chronic illness. $2.3 trillion per year. And that's not all money spent, that's money lost as well. But that's the chronic disease and mental health burden. 70% of deaths are from chronic health conditions. That's dying slowly, right? We can keep people dying for decades now. We want to keep people healthy, not keep them just dying. All right, so why is this happening? So now we're miserable, but now let's figure out why is this happening? So that way we can get to some answers. So we have built-in solutions for cars. We'll apply this to our bodies soon. So how do mechanical systems work? What do they need? What do you need to get a mechanical system to work? We're actually going to have three things we're going to talk about. Very general.
Gasoline.
Gasoline. All right, very good.
Engine that runs.
An engine, great. And so we'd call the engine a part.
The brain.
And you need gasoline, which is the power. You're good at this game. Okay. And the third thing, what'd you say? You were right. You remember?
Gasoline.
Yep.
Engine power.
Yep.
Is the brain.
And a brain. You need a brain. You need brain. That's information.
So we have computers?
That's why we have drivers too. Well, not all cars anymore, right? But back in the days we had drivers of cars. So that's the information providing, and there may be a computer system in a car too, but that would be the information. Okay. So how do computer systems work? What do they need? What's this supplying?
Electricity.
That's supplying power, right? You need the parts, the screen, the keyboard, and you need information, the processing system. All right, so what about living systems? What do living systems need to work properly?
A brain.
Yep, need a brain.
They need to have a source going through, feeding all the parts.
All right, so you need parts. You need the brain, which is the information, right? And you need that same thing you needed for those other two also. What was that?
Power.
Power. And power, we'll talk about it in a minute. So how do you know if a living system's working properly? Well,
if the parts
if the parts don't work?
malfunctioning.
Yeah, if the parts malfunctioning, it's great. And so you've got professions who actually help with this, right? We kind of know if our body's not working right. Our body's designed to be healthy, and if it's not, then we're like, well, something wrong. But then we have professions that are specialized in helping us know. So, the parts include hearts and feet and muscles and skeleton and joints, right? And there's a doctor for every one of these. So what's a heart doctor called? Cardiologist. What's a joint doctor called?
Jointologist.
Jointologist. That's very good. So an orthopedist, right? What's a foot doctor called?
Podiatrist.
Podiatrist. Good. All right. Okay, I got one for you guys now. What is a kidney doctor called?
Nephrologist.
Ooh, nephrologist. So good. All right. Okay. So we've got different, and these are generally medical doctors have these specialties. Although, sometimes you have chiropractors who have a specialty in orthopedics or other things, right? But mostly we're looking at MDs who specialize in these parts. Whoops.
Power.
Power. where does power, what is the power?
Power comes from the cells.
Yeah, nutrition, it's what we eat, right? Our macronutrients supply the power to the body. And then that gets digested and absorbed through your gut, right? So which the gut would be in other parts. You've got a gastroenterologist, right? And so these guys are good at making sure your parts are they don't have holes in them, and make sure they're kind of working right, they're moving well, they're basically working as they're designed for the most part. We call it gross function. General overall, it's like, yeah, it's working, it's generally intact and functioning. But then nutrition. Who's the specialists who help us know if our nutrition is good?
I can't think of what you call it.
Nutritionist.
A nutritionist, that sounds good. And they do pretty good. Nutritionists almost fit into here. Registered dietitian. Yeah. So they almost fit into here. They do fit into here, but they're basically just making sure you don't have a disease, right? Again, it's what is your focus. So you can be a nutritionist and focus on disease and go, okay, we're going to make sure you don't get scurvy. We're going to make sure you don't get rickets. We're going to make sure, do you have enough just so you don't develop disease? And that's good. You want to know that. And these people often work in hospitals or in schools and stuff, or you get the basic nutrients you need. But they're not really looking to, well, I don't want to say they're not looking to promote health, because they are, but they're somewhere in between here, all right? So we're looking at naturopathic doctors or functional medicine doctors. Those are ones who look to restore and looking for more fine-tuned function, all right? And then our last one, information. That's the brain and the nerves. And who does that? Who makes sure, and not just a part, right? The neurologist is going to make sure your parts there are working, but what to make sure it's delivering all the signals in a really highly efficient way. Who does that? Chiropractor does that, all right? And so they do adjustments, make sure the nervous system's working right. Functional neurologist, and so I went and got that extra specialty, so a neurologist, board certified in neurology, so I can look at even more details because it's in control of everything. I want to make sure it's working right. Acupuncturists could fit into that category. They're not really nerves, they're not really blood, they're just kind of somewhere we don't know. but they're making sure that flow of information is working well. All right. So because systems are made of parts, stress causes them to eventually do what?
Can't lose function.
Yeah, they break down. So what happens if you take away or interfere with parts, power, or information for a plant? And that would be stressing the plant. What would happen to the plant? It would die, or it would at least be kind of sickly, right? It would start to wilt, maybe yellow leaves, and you look at it and you go, that plant needs something. We'll give it a stick to hold it up. Well, that's not going to be very helpful, right? Or we'll give it sodium and potassium and phosphorus, NPK. I don't know if NPK, nitrogen. There, that's nitrogen. But anyway, that's what they give. They give a lot of. They provide to farmland, right? To help the plants. They give them this NPK to help the soil get better. But what about all the other stuff? There's not just 3 nutrients. Anyway, so the plant will start to break down. It'll start to get unhealthy. Stress, physical, chemical, or mental stress for the human body, that is the cause. Okay, so what is the effect? What happens if you break down or stress the parts, power, information in the human being?
Depression.
It's going to be like a plant. It's going to start to wilt, and that could be depression, unhealthy, looking kind of yellow. Maybe needs a stick to prop it up. So, but it's just that it's naturally what is the cause and effect. Now we could just say, okay, a stick would be like getting rid of the symptoms, like, oh, it's wilting, so let's give it a stick, so now it's not wilted anymore. This is great. Well, the plant's not any more healthy, it's just standing up. And this is like helping the body to live longer, but not be any more healthy. So we want to get to the cause. Why is that plant wilting? It's not wilting because it lacks a stick it's tied to. The same with our body. Symptoms are the natural effect of our parts, power, and information providing feedback responses. So when we have pain or we have numbness, or we have gut problems, or we have rashes, or we have dementia. These are symptoms of the body not working properly, and we need to get to the cause and restore that so the body then can function the way it's supposed to. So let's listen to a young 72-year-old patient of ours. I'm going to put myself on mute and then play this.
Hi, my name is Marietta Diaz. I'll be turning 72 this year. I used to have where you want to burp, you can feel the acid in your throat going up in your mouth, and I can feel some food coming out.
Was that every time you ate? Or just often?
Very often I do that.
Yeah.
That has greatly improved too. I don't have that. I don't do that anymore. I don't feel that. And very seldom I have that.
Yeah. I remember too. You were telling us about how you just had like an empty kind of feeling in your stomach. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. It feels like even if you eat, it doesn't hit the spot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have that anymore too.
Yeah. And how long were you having those kind of gut health issues for before you came?
For the longest time.
Really
for the
long
longest time. Yeah.
And what kind of things do you feel like helped this time around? Was it just your adjustments, or did you do anything else different?
I also have Dr. Hobbs also give me some of those vitamins. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that also helped.
All right.
That helped.
So your adjustments and your vitamins.
Mm-hmm. And the way you guys teach me how the kind of food you eat, the stress, that with all the lessons that I learned from you guys, you gave me like all those handouts. You text me all those things, So that really helps. It really helps.
That's good.
Yeah, because before, just like you're sluggish, right? Now I have more energy.
All right, cool. So just an example of patient. Let's see, let me go back here. Okay, so how does this work? Well, we learned with her, we did a whole bunch of things, right? We did adjustment, we did supplementation after we did lab testing, and then we also gave her diet changes. So she used the whole deal. So that is focusing on wellness as opposed to focusing on the disease. Conventional model, where is the focus? So where do they focus? So you've got genetics, you've got body system and function, and you've got symptom or effect. Most of the medical system seems to focus here on the symptoms. And they'll say, oh, you have an immune deficiency, and they'll name it, or you have a leaky gut or malabsorption, or you have irritable bowel syndrome, or right? And they're like, oh yeah, I looked that up, and it's all those symptoms I've got. Well, what do you do about it? It's like, well, there's a medication for it. And so that's often why they name it, is so they can then give it do research on it, and they can research a particular medication, and then go, okay, this is what's for that condition. When you name it that, then they get this. If you name it something else, then they get this medication. And so they don't really seem to be looking for what's caused it. It's just what medication is appropriate for the named condition you've got. So they look at symptoms first. And it's okay to look at symptoms. But really we're looking at a whole body disorder. Oh, let's go back one. So environmental stresses. So genetics, where, yes, that matters, but there's just not a lot you can do about it, except you can change genetic expression. Well, how do you do that? Well, you can do it in a negative way through environmental stresses. And that then creates epigenetics, which is modifying your genetics. You can modify how your genes are expressed for good or for bad. With physical, chemical, and mental factors. Those are the environmental stresses, and those can be positive or they can be negative. And so for the positive, that's an environmental support. Hey, let's help support your body's function, and we'll talk about how you do that with your gut tonight. So who's in control of all these systems? Nutrition, inflammation, immune, digestive, detoxification. Who's in control of all that?
Brain.
The brain is in control. The nervous system. controls everything. So if we want to get this at its root, we address the cause, because it is a whole body disorder. And then the body will express its function in a better way, and you'll have less symptoms. So where should we start? Should we start with the symptoms? And that's upside down on purpose, right? That would be no. We start with the cause, and then the symptoms get better.
When we start with the cause instead of the symptoms, how do we know the cause to start with?
That's great. So the question is, if we're going to address the cause, how do we know what the cause is? Because we know the symptoms. I feel it. I can tell you what they are. I can't tell you what the cause. Well, that's the purpose of doctors, right? Is to go, okay, I hear you and I understand you can't figure this out, so I'm going to look for it, either with my experience examining you, or I'm going to run some tests and I'm going to figure out what is causing this, and then we'll address those and you'll get better. So we'll talk about how we do that tonight. So treatment, we can treat the nervous system, give you guidance of what to do physically, chemically, and mentally, may address nutritional deficiencies, give you diet instructions, essentially just to get the whole body working the way it's supposed to. So like with this patient who just spoke, we did adjustments. So where did that affect? That improved her nervous system, and so then her body could start using all this information and supplies to get proper function, and so that she had less symptoms. So lifestyle will give you guidance, and then you change your life. And that's why it's not so popular. So this is why the medical system has so much focus on disease and infection, disease and trauma, drugs and surgery, because those don't require lifestyle change. So you say, hey doctor, what can you do for me? It's like, well, you need to change how you think, how your exercise, and what you're eating, drinking, and breathing. It's like, okay, well, how about we start with a pill, and then maybe I'll do that. And the doctor's like, no, you don't need a pill. You need to change these things. Well, guess what? 90% of people are going to do. I'm going to find a real doctor who has a pill for this, because I know I saw on TV there's pills out there for this. Right? And here comes GLP-1s. All right. So gut-brain cascade. So you've got genetic problems for sure, and then environmental causes, which we know environmental is not just out there, it's also what we choose to do with our environment, right? What we eat, drink, and breathe. And it creates gut imbalances, gut bacteria imbalances, multiple triggers. What can cause these imbalances? Well, C-sections, antibiotics, pain relievers, not being breastfed, chronic stress, the Western diet. Yeah, so all these things can contribute to gut problems, and then that leads to leaky brain. And you actually can't have leaky brain. So what does that mean? Well, leaky gut is when, well, we'll talk about leaky gut in a minute. I'll talk about leaky brain right now. Leaky brain is when stuff gets through the blood-brain barrier, and it should not. There should be there should be a really good filter for your brain before stuff gets in. But if you have gut problems, then you often have brain problems, partly because of that leaky brain barrier. But we learned a new thing. There's a back door to your brain we're going to talk about tonight. So some quick facts. Your gut contains 38 trillion bacteria. I tried counting them one time. No, I didn't. I'm still counting. And they keep moving. It's so hard. It's like counting stars. Okay, so I did not try that. Counting 38 trillion bacteria, 500 to 1,000 different species. 90% of the body's serotonin is made in the gut. Serotonin? Who's heard of serotonin? Serotonin, that's the feel-good hormone of the brain, right?
Right.
No. Well, it is, but 90% of it's made in the gut, and it's not the feel-good hormone in your gut. It's just another hormone that has function, and often it's produced a lot when things are wrong. 70% of your immune cells are in your digestive system, starting with your tonsils, right? And more nerves signaling to the brain than from the brain. So you have more nerves that are sending signals up to tell the brain what's going on than you have going to the gut to tell it what to do. Leaky gut. So what is leaky gut? Who's heard of leaky gut? Leaky gut. So is that like diarrhea? What is leaky gut? No, it's not. So it's when stuff leaks from, this is what's called the lumen, or the center of the intestines, right? And then you have all these different layers. And then, and so what we're looking at here is this little square whoop, goes over to here. So this is the inside. This is the inside. So this would be like a circle around. These are microscopic, super tiny, right? That is a red blood cell. So that gives you an idea how big these are. And so if you have a leaky gut, then things leak through here into your bloodstream. So that's what's meant by leaky. It's not leaking out of your body. It's leaking from here through your bloodstream in a way that it shouldn't. Okay, so let's talk more.
Lectins.
What causes that? Yeah, so Dr. Gundry would say it's lectins. Lectins are bad, right? And they can be for people. But it's poor diet, just poor diet in general, right? Antibiotics, infections, chronic pain. Chronic pain can cause leaky gut? Yes, partly because it causes a reactive stress in the body and mental stress. Toxins in our environment, alcohol. There's a lot of things that cause leaky gut. And this is what leaky gut looks like. You have stuff that leaks in between the cells, and you have stuff that will leak through the cells, but you also have stuff that cannot get through that should get through. So you can have deficiencies, and you can have toxicities in the body because of that. All right, leaky gut. And of course, if you've got problems, that's how your immune system starts to react, right? You have these immune cells, immune complexes. You can have autoimmunity, inflammation, blood-brain barrier breach. A lot of stuff goes on there because of leaky gut. All right, leaky gut. These are symptoms of leaky gut. These are symptoms of leaky brain. Okay, now I want this not just to be information, I want it to be transformation tonight. So I'm going to give you some takeaways. What are foods that cause leaky gut? Gluten and most grains actually cause leaky gut. Are all grains bad for everybody all the time? No. But a lot of grains are bad for most people most of the time. And gluten more than most. Is it because gluten's so bad? No. Well, maybe it is now, but things have been changed, right? Foods have been changed. They've been manipulated. Chemicals are put on foods. A lot of foods are sprayed with pesticides even after they're harvested. And then our bodies are different too. Right? So you've got all this stuff that factors in. But gluten and most grains, sugar and artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners, they actually change your gut bacteria. Okay, so there ain't nothing free. All right, when you have this sugar-free stuff, it's often changing your gut bacteria, which in this case, actually, it's been shown to increase the probability of developing diabetes. It's like, what? The sugar-free stuff is supposed to prevent diabetes? Pretty weird. Conventional meat, what does that mean? Well, most of the meat you're going to get from the grocery store, stuff that's grain-fed, tends to be more inflammatory. Conventional dairy, refined vegetable oils, medications, especially NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, stuff you can get over the counter, antibiotics, antacids, environmental toxins like tap water. Tap water, well, it can be. Pesticides, many skin, hair, and cleaning products. A lot of stuff that can contribute to leaky gut. Foods that help leaky gut. There aren't any. No, I'm kidding. We'll go over that later. All right, the literal connection. There is a connection between the autonomic nervous system. The vagus nerve is that literal connection. That's cranial nerve what? You guys know what cranial nerve it is? Number?
Ask the question again.
What cranial nerve is the vagus nerve? It's number 10. 10. All right. Vagus nerve connects to the brain in the digestive system. How many cranial nerves do we have? 12. That's number 10. All right. You don't have to remember that one. Okay. So parts, power, and information. Information, all right? Autonomic nervous system provides that information. Thank you for that great graphic. Okay, so the new gut-brain connection. This is brand new research, right? 2026 in Nature came out in March. This is just hot off the press. Let's not worry about the title of it because that's kind of confusing for you guys. Old bacteria causes old brain. The young germ-free mice, that was mice without any bacteria in their gut, and they were doing great. They were spry, they were remembering things. How do you know if a mice is remembering something? A mouse is. So this is what they did. They took the mouse, and when they put new things in the cage, the mice are super curious. They're like, what's going on? And they're sniffing it, and they're checking it out, and they spend a lot of time. And if they put something old in, they might look at it a little bit. It's like, oh, I've seen that before. I'm going to spend more of my time with the new thing. And what they found is the young mice that received the impaired mice gut bacteria, so they put old dementia mice bacteria into the gut of healthy young mice, and they displayed learning and memory impairment, which is basically mice dementia. So bacteria from a demented mouse in a non-demented mouse cause the non-demented mouse to become demented. Just the bacteria. That gut-brain connection is super real. Now this research was super thorough, so they went deeper and deeper and deeper, and I'll tell you what they found. These bacteria, they found the bacteria that was doing it. Goldsteiny. It produced more medium-chain fatty acids of a particular type. And they found that it went into the vagus nerve. What's the vagus nerve? Cranial nerve 10 that goes from the gut and other places to the brain. It went up the vagus nerve, and it decreased vagus nerve function. Okay? And that also then went up to the hippocampus and decreased hippocampus nerve function. What's hippocampus? That's the memory part of the brain. This bacteria caused memory problems, and they figured out how. So then they were able to reverse it. They did some really fancy ways and chemical stuff and different kind of mice, and so it's a little something you couldn't really do in humans very well. But they found they could reverse it too by even in the ones that had the bad bacteria. If they blocked this, then they could return function of this. That was pretty amazing. So the gut-brain connection is real. It's physical. And we found the connection. Now, is this what happens in people? We don't know. This is in a mouse. But it's pretty amazing what they found. So what does this vagus nerve do? The autonomic nervous system, that's the vagus nerve is part of that. It's a very complex recipe for our body function. Right? So there's the sympathetic part and there's the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is that vagus nerve. And so here you have the parasympathetic portion, and you notice most of it comes from the brainstem and sacrum here, and vagus nerve is the one down here that goes to all these different places. So if you have, this is the vagus nerve and the rest of the parasympathetic nervous system, it impacts resting, digesting, repair, and development, whereas this is fight, flight, and freeze. So which is the good one? Which one do you want? This is a trick question, by the way. Resting, digesting, repair, and development. And this one. You want them both. You need it. Now, we spend a lot of time here, right? And so, yeah, we want to spend more time here. This is where we need more focus. This is where we need more activation. But we need them both. That's why it was a trick question. So if you have too much of this, then you got all this excess activation of some of these. But also you have decreased digestive function. So if somebody's stressed out all the time, sometimes they'll get constipation because the bowels aren't moving. Sometimes they'll get diarrhea because the bowels aren't working. And they're just like, get rid of everything. I don't have time to deal with this. Adrenaline, right? That higher adrenaline, higher heart rate, increased sweating, right? So all these things are activation of sympathetic nervous system. And these, a lot of them are the same, like increased digestive function, slows heart rate, increases salivation. So they're a balance, right? But we spend a lot of time here stressing out about a lot of stuff, and our body uses affects all these different organs, and it doesn't need to usually, because we're stressing out about stuff that we don't need all these body functions for, and that's why it has a negative impact on them. Because if you just, if we go back to the tiger thing, right? For like, you see a tiger and you need to run from the tiger, right? You don't need to be digesting, so you're going to shut down that function. You need to be breathing hard. You need a heart rate. You need to get that blood flow. You need to stop blood flow to some of your organs. You need to increase it to others. That's all great. And you burn that adrenaline, and great. I either died or I survived if I ran fast enough. And that's all super good. But if you're stressing out about stuff that you can't do anything about, especially, or things that you can't physically impact, then this just builds up as negativity in your body. All right. So what causes excess fight or flight? Well, I went through an example there. But there's a lot of things, right? Stuff that we worry about that we can't control.
Anxiety.
And what does it lead to? It can lead to brain problems and gut problems. So this is a bit of research here. Stress alters the gut-brain axis. Perceived stress worsens gut function and pain. Okay? Just the perception of something going wrong. It's perceived stress. So it matters what our perception is, not necessarily what reality is. Because when we perceive stress, then we activate all those different sympathetic systems. So our, whoops, a little fast there. Okay. So gut alters stress response. A healthy gut reduces response to stress. Okay, so they did some pretty fancy research to determine that, but that was pretty cool. So if you have a healthy gut, you can still have that same stress response, and your body responds in a healthier way. It activates those systems in a less extreme way. So a healthy gut provides a buffer to a stress response. And a healthy gut restores nerve growth and survival. Your nervous system works better. It recovers and heals better and functions better. Gut-brain connection is powerful. So signs you have autonomic or vagus imbalance. What is the vagus nerve? That's cranial nerve 10. That's part of that parasympathetic nervous system, right? If you have too low parasympathetic, or if you have too high sympathetic, those are almost the same because they create a balance. You can create all these different dysfunctions in the body. All right, so we're talking about the why. What causes these problems? So we know mental stress causes these problems. We know diet causes these problems. We know medications cause these problems. Vagus nerve function is linked to autoimmune and chronic disease, right? We talked about what is the problem. Autoimmune diseases, all these problems we have with people these days. Let's see. Damaged sympathetic function may have pathogenic or disease-causing role in development of multiple sclerosis. Lowered vagus tone may cause lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, cardiovascular disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, sleep and fibromyalgia problems. Resistance to and resilience despite stress. Okay, so we have stress. We can't get rid of all of our stress. We want to be resistant to the problem. We want to be able to handle it. So it's not stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it, says Hans Selye. What was one way we just learned that we can improve our resistance to stress? Healthy gut. All right? Healthy gut improves our resistance to stress. So how can we change our reaction to a stressful event? Well, healthy gut, but or something else. So let's talk about what's the solution. All right. Hey, let me get to it. 4 steps to heal gut dysbiosis. What is dysbiosis? Dys means bad or wrong. Bio is living environments. This is the living environment in your gut. When we talked about 38 trillion, because I counted them, bacteria in your gut. All right, so what's step number 1? What are some things, what do you think we can do to heal our gut?
Probiotics.
Probiotics, okay, good bacteria.
Prebiotics.
Prebiotics, now you're just throwing out fancy words, but you're right. Prebiotics and probiotics. What about postbiotics?
Never heard of them.
Yeah, there's actually, it's a thing. So that's what the bacteria make after they eat the
Okay.
after they eat the food. Okay. Well, let's talk about it. So remove things that harm the gut. All right, it seems pretty obvious. That goes back to the food medications, bad food medications. All right, stress. Replace missing digestive functions. What do you replace? So let's say you're deficient in digestive enzymes. Let's say you're not digest your food. Let's say you're deficient in bile. You had your gallbladder removed. Well, now you have an inability to digest and absorb fats, or maybe your decreased acid production. As people get older, they have decreased acid production, and like, oh no, everybody's on antacids. They have too much acid. Well, they have too much acid in their throat, but often they have too little acid in their stomach, and that's why it comes up, because they eat the food and it doesn't digest well, and then it ends up coming back up, especially when they lay down. So most people, if they take more acid, they're actually going to digest better, and then it won't come back up. So that's kind of seems counterintuitive. So things that may need to be replaced, and so we determine that with individuals. Rebalance with beneficial bacteria, probiotics, right? And prebiotics would be like basically our food. There are prebiotic supplements, but it's good fiber food. It provides those prebiotics, which is basically food for the bacteria. And repair the gut with food and supplements. Okay, so remove, replace, rebalance, and repair. That provides power, which is the nutrition for a healthy gut. All right, we want to find the bottom-up causes with functional medicine. So this is looking at the gut first and seeing how we can recover, restore that. Hey, look at that. That's me. No, that's me. That's me. This is my son. This is a few years back. And this is my son. So you see the dark circles under his eye? So that was years later. He was about 9. He was about the age when I was sick, right? So we see this starting to develop in him. It's like, what's going on? And so we did some testing, and we found out he wasn't absorbing well from his gut. He had some malabsorption issues. And we did more testing. We found out he had deficiencies. And so we addressed them, and now he's healthy and doing great. And see how much he grew just in 6 months? No, this is 10 years later. So we find these problems with some functional lab testing. This is one of the tests. It's called the metabolomics. This is one of our favorite ones. It's a finger prick blood test and urine sample. And we find about oxidative stress, which is like rust from free radicals. And nuclear power plant in each cell, which is the mitochondria. Omega-3 and 6 oils, is it properly balanced? Toxic load, and ability to activate and convert nutrients. So we find all that out from this test. In particular to the gut, we're looking for malabsorption, dysbiosis, and yeast overgrowth. So this is like bacterial overgrowth and yeast overgrowth. And we find these numbers being high, then we know there's a problem. And then we address it. Now that was bottom up, altering the bottom up causes with functional medicine. So here's an example. Vagus nerve mediates the relationship between bacteria and their body effects. Okay, so what does that mean? So vagus nerve is that connection between the gut and the brain, and psychobiotics, those are bacteria that affect brain function. Okay, and how do they affect brain function? Through the vagus nerve. We already talked about that mouse one and the medium chain fatty acids, but also and that's now we know probably why. This is an earlier study. And if they severed the vagus nerve, they cut it, it abolishes the response to the psychobiotic administration. So, which means if they gave bacteria to the mice, caused them to have mental problems, and then they cut that nerve, they would no longer have the mental problems. They had other problems then, but they didn't have the mental problems. So sometimes these are not really good solutions, but they're really cool information that we learned because of the research. All right, so top 7 gut offenders, we talked about those, right? Bad stuff, don't do that. We do get the ones here. Okay, water, purified, mineral rich. So good water is a good start. low sugar, local fresh fruits and vegetables, fermented vegetables. Those are ones, and not dead fermented, but live fermented. So that you'll find that in the refrigerator, or you make your own. And this is like sauerkraut or kimchi or other things, kombucha. All right. Organic, free-range, grass-fed, and finished beef. What does that mean? Finished. So they're always trying to get around it, right? So it's like, oh, this is grass-fed, and then we finished it off with grain, but it's grass-fed. And it's like, well, guess what? Every single cow in the world is grass-fed, except for maybe little baby cows, because it's cheaper. You put them out on the range, right, and they eat the grass, and then you bring them in, you fatten them up and stuff. So it needs to say grass-finished to actually have that benefit. Wild-caught salmon, cod, halibut, and raw cultured organic dairy. So often you'll hear about dairy and beef being bad. And I've mentioned them being bad over here, right? Conventional meat, conventional dairy they are, most people, they have their problems with them because they tend to create more inflammation. But if you get them the right way, they're not so bad. They can be quite good. Okay, so that was bottom-up stuff. Now what about top-down? Causes, it's functional neurology now. This is one of the tests we do to measure the reserve ability to adapt to stress. It's called the heart rate variability. It's not heart rate, but the heart variability. So anyway, we graph it and we find you should be in the green, and this person was out here in the red, and that means they've got problems with their sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system. Too much here or too little here creates an imbalance, and too little activity overall should be up and here. And so we know they need to support their body function from top down or bottom up because things aren't working right. How can you do that? We can do an outside-in approach. They use vagal nerve stimulators. And this research said it might prevent the progression of debilitating and deadly disease. It's pretty cool. So there are little devices. So they actually, most of the research is done where they do a surgery and they wrap the vagus nerve in a wire, and then they use it as a stimulator. And it actually does really good for a lot of people with some serious intestinal issues. But there are also vagal nerve stimulators, just like little shockers that you can use, and those can be quite helpful. But I'm going to show you ways to do it to yourself without shocking yourself. They also found activating vagus nerve for gut and inflammatory and brain diseases. In this research, they were able to restore memory in mice by activating the vagus nerve. So now we know we can do it through the gut, heal the gut, and then we can, in the good right bacteria in the gut, that we can create those signals that have a healthy brain through the vagus nerve. Or we can actually just activate the vagus nerve, and that seems to help heal the other direction. So that's pretty interesting. 10 ways to improve your vagal tone. Positive social relationships. Hanging out with people that are good for you. Cold. Like those cold baths, cold plunges. Okay. Gargling. Singing, chanting, humming. As old monks, they seem to know something, right? A long time ago, but that there was something to that. Massage, laughter, yoga and tai chi, breathing deeply and slowly, exercise, and vagal nerve stimulators, electrocuting yourself. And chiropractic. Really? Chiropractic improves that? Yep, so I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you how we changed with some of the breathing and thinking exercises, and then chiropractic. So this is with the mental relaxation. We had a patient who was low. He measured out here. Wow. So he was pretty bad. It was one of the worst we'd seen out here. And his score was, what was his overall score? 48. That was the lowest score I'd ever seen. So when we get people below 60, we start being a little worried about them. And he was consistently in that range there. And so 8:15 before, and then he did relaxation exercises. By 8:45, he was at 59. So that was pretty cool. So we went up to here. We went from out there to up here. We also did another patient. We did chiropractic adjustment. And they were at this point right here. and then at 131, and after chiropractic adjustment, it went up 20 points up to here. That was pretty cool. Now, will it stay there? If you support yourself nutritionally, physically, chemically, mentally, then yes. Otherwise, it'll fade back down. So this is a little bit about chiropractic and that vagal tone. So this is where we were measuring the vagal tone here. But here's some research about it. A healthy autonomic nervous system balance after correction of vertebral subluxations. So that's doing the adjustment, is correcting that vertebral subluxation. What is a vertebral subluxation? It's a misalignment of the spinal column which negatively affects nerve function. So it can be a misalignment, or it can actually be stuck in place. It might look like, you take an x-ray, it's like, oh, everything looks like it's straight, but it's not moving right. Well, that would be another way to create a subluxation. And then you correct it, and then the nervous system works better. Why is that so impacting? Well, this is the skull up here, right? So this area here and the neck, and this is the neck. These muscles right here, they have 200 times more nerve receptors than the latissimus dorsi. So if you took a 1 centimeter area of this muscle and of this muscle, and you checked how many nerve receptors in there, you'd find a certain number here, and you'd find 200 times more here. Why? Where are these signals going? They're going to your brain. Your brain really cares about this area. This area of the spine is super important to brain nervous system function and ultimately to our vagus nerve function. Neck adjustments had a parasympathetic effect. That means it improved rest, digest, and heal. And we want more of that. All right, I'm going to tell you a little story. 80-year-old female. She had constant alternating diarrhea and constipation. And she couldn't do her housework or care for her husband. So she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, I'm going to give you a prescription for that, right? Because that's what they do. And if that helps, then great. Well, it didn't help. So he said, okay, well, let's take an x-ray. He took an x-ray and couldn't find anything that was wrong. So he said, well, let's take an MRI. So this doctor's really serious. He wants to know what's going on with you. Can we figure it out? Because she's obviously got some problems with her gut. And of course, you know, she may have already been to a gastroenterologist. And took an MRI and everything looked okay. Still couldn't find the problem. So he gave her Vicodin. And that didn't help. And now she's kind of depressed. He's like, the doctor's just drugging me up. Even though he was really trying to find the problem, he just couldn't find it. And what's he looking for? Disease. He's looking for infection, disease, or trauma. And it's good. You want people looking for that. But when you can't find those things, then you don't want to use those tools, which is drugs and surgery, to promote wellness, because they don't promote wellness. They just promote aliveness. That's a word I made up. All right, so we took an x-ray. She ends up coming to us, and she had a 46 millimeter head forward posture, so her head's forward quite a bit. And then we took a post x-ray after we treated her for, in this case, it was just a month, from August to September. And this is how much it changed. So she was much more upright, and more importantly to her, her bowel movements were much improved. She was able to cook and clean, and she wasn't dependent on medication anymore. Pretty cool. Now, why can we get these kind of side effects from correcting subluxations and nerve function? So these are the kind of side effects: autonomic function, endocrine function, cardiovascular, muscle strength, overall athletic ability, range of motion, breathing, reaction time, etc., etc., etc. Now, why do we get these kind of side benefits? How can helping the spine work better, how can it create these kind of effects?
Allows the organs to be in alignment to work better.
So it's in alignment and it works better, yeah. And so and so most people would say, okay, well, I get range of motion, or maybe even athletic ability, because your spine's working better. I get that. But what about, this autonomic function and visual acuity and general health? How can it do those things? How can it improve your gut function? What's the connection?
Brain.
The brain. Yeah. So we improve brain function, which then controls, that's where the vagus nerve comes from, is from the brain. All right, one more story.
Hi.
Oops, just a second.
Hi.
My name is Sierra, and I became very ill about a year ago and was experiencing a lot of really severe gut problems like bloating, diarrhea, indigestion, total lack of appetite. I lost about 15 pounds, and I'm already very thin, so I really didn't want to. I was having really bad headaches and migraines, and I went to many different doctors in the Valley and in Santa Barbara, like the Sanson Clinic, and a gastroenterologist there. I did different testing, allergy tests, stool tests, blood tests, and everything was coming back that I was fine, and all these doctors were telling me that you're totally okay. But I was just super sick and very discouraged. So I came to, a friend recommended Hi, my name is Sierra, and I know, but I am so glad that I did, and they've just came to, a friend recommended Synergy Chiropractic, and I was super hesitant and nervous to go, but I am so glad that I did, and they've just started healing me, and yeah, I look forward to continuing care with them and healing more and more. So I'm already starting to get a lot better. I no longer have most of the symptoms, so I'm super excited and thankful to be here. So I had to take off about a month and a half from work. During that time, I hike for work. I work in the national park, and I was super weak. I would stand up and get super dizzy, and just wasn't able to eat, so I could barely work at all. Now I'm feeling so much better. I'm eating, full meals every day. I have energy. I wake up most days feeling really well. I used to wake up every day with a headache, and now I feel a lot more energized. Some days are still a little up and down, but as I continue coming here, I'm just continuing to see more and more improvements. Awesome. Yeah.
So that is great story. All right, so stress causes vertebral subluxations. What kind of stress? Physical stress, chemical stress, mental stress, and they all interact with one another. Stress causes vertebral subluxations. Well, when does this start? Well, I'll tell you, it starts even with babies. So this study, there's a couple studies here represented, 3 different studies. First of all, the birth process, there's 7 to 30 pounds of force, of pulling force by the doctor during a normal vaginal delivery. How heavy is a baby? Maybe 7 pounds.
7.
Yeah. And so can you imagine pulling with, let's say, 20 pounds on the baby's head to help remove them? No. That's pretty crazy. All right. Now, I'm not saying doctors are wrong to do that. I don't deliver babies. I don't know how to do it, right? So, but there's just a lot of stress on the baby. In 2010, a device was introduced that would warn if forceps delivery was more than 50 pounds. Well, yeah, I would think it should be a warning. But that was pretty crazy. That's the point. It was like, oh, we should really warn them this could be harmful if we get more than 50 pounds. It's like, wow, I didn't know how much force was really used. I've been talking about this for years, but just recently looked up this research and found out how much force was actually used. So this is another study. 1,250 infants were evaluated during the first 5 days of life. And they found that 90% had suffered birth trauma and strain of the neck and the cranium, the head, and 10% had severe trauma. Well, now you're not surprised if we understand the force of delivery. Did I skip one?
Would it be better to have a cesarean?
Better. So I learned cesarean sections are actually really forceful too. So I had a patient in here the other day, because I always thought, oh, they're going to cut the mom open and the baby just gets lifted out gently. And she said, oh yeah, no. She said, they told me this before, let me warn you beforehand, that this big lady's going to crawl up on the table and she's going to push with all of her might to help that baby get. And I'm like, whoa, that is crazy. I had no idea. So, yeah, I don't know exactly how much force is used there, but it's not, there's problems with that in lots of ways. Number one, C-section, we talked about, causes imbalance in bacteria. You don't get the same bacteria with a vaginal delivery. The baby gets what it needs as part of that process. It's really interesting. All right, spinal cord and brainstem injuries occur often during the process of birth, but frequently escape diagnosis. Why?
Not looking for it.
They're not looking for it. They're looking for infection, disease,
They're
trauma,
breathing.
right? Are they breathing? Do they have, are they the right color? Are they blue? Are they the limbs intact, right? So they're looking for things that are really critical, and they should be looking for those. That's what they need to spend their time on at that point. And they're not looking for this dysfunction. They're looking for infection, disease, and trauma. And so we see a lot of babies who have problems, whether they be a torticollis or intestinal problems or colic, and it's really no surprise that babies that need chiropractic, and they respond really well, which is cool. All right, so now you get to see what an adjustment looks like.
She liked it.
That's her saying, I don't know.
That was an adjustment. It didn't look like it did anything, right?
Well, her
So-
frown said something.
So, yeah, and this is me adjusting a little older girl here. If we can get that one working. All right, we won't worry about that one. Okay, gut-brain connection. So we're almost at the end now. So what do we do in our office to help people? Well, hopefully we've given you some good tips to take care of yourself tonight. I want to give you some action steps that you can apply. But if you need help, we're here to help you. And this is how we go about it. First part is we do history. We just sit and talk to you. You'll fill out some questionnaires. What have you tried before? What's going on? And we want to learn from that. We want to learn from you about yourself. And then we'll check out your spine and your nervous system. Ask about your symptom history. We'll analyze spinal motion palpation. How is your spine working? We'll do a scan of your spinal muscles and nerves and see how they're working. We'll continue on more testing, checking your autonomic nervous system, sensory and motor testing, and more. We'll check often. We'll check posture, gait, and digital foot analysis, x-ray if needed. So it just depends on what you need, what we'll do. And then part 3 is the results. So we'll tell you what we found. All right, we'll review your findings and a therapeutic trial or an adjustment to see how well your body responds, if that's appropriate. And then often we'll do functional lab testing with people as well, looking for deficiencies, leaky gut syndrome, toxicity, and more. All right, and we'll give you an offer for those of you who are watching this presentation, and if you're watching this up to 2 weeks within this time frame, so it'll be through April of 2026. Then we'll usually this evaluation, excluding the functional medicine, that would be extra. We'll tell you if that's something you need. But it's usually $275 to $345, and so we'll do it for $145. All that first part 1, 2, and 3, we would do that for $145 if you contact us by the end of April and make an appointment. All right, so what does the first visit look like? That's when we're going to do all that testing. How much does it cost? I went over that for you. We're going to find out what's going on. Is this something we can help you with? And that's really the purpose of that initial evaluation. Is this something we can help you with? If not, then we'll let you know. If it is, then we'll let you know. So what about people who are outside the area? Often we'll hear people say, oh, I have a friend in Tennessee or whatever. Well, we often have people travel, and we can do this evaluation, and then we can send you back with things you can do, or you can do it with your regular doctor. Or we'll try to find somebody in your area that can help you. And yeah, there are people around who can do this. Frequency. So what if we treat you, if we start doing correcting the subluxations? So there's two parts of this, right? There's the subluxations, the spinal chiropractic part that affects your nervous system, and then there's the functional medicine. Functional medicine just takes a few visits, but then your healing process takes months. The chiropractic process, we do adjustments. We usually start out a couple times a week, and then we go down to once a week and then every other week to continue that supportive healing process. How much does all this cost? Well, it varies, but we're looking at the average patient who has a moderate level of problem. So maybe $2,500, $3,000 is a ballpark figure. Does insurance cover it? No. They do help with some of the lab tests, but this is, again, the whole medical system is looking for infection, disease, and trauma, and using drugs and surgery. We're looking to promote wellness, and so they just don't really recognize this stuff. And that's why most of your medical doctors have no idea. They may value what we're doing, or they may not. They may think it's ridiculous, because it is. If you're in the emergency room, right, this kind of work is ridiculous. It is a waste of time, and it is harmful to be looking for these things. But if it's a chronic problem and you want to get well, then this is exactly where we go to do this. Are we in insurance networks? No. Except VA and Medicare, we actually are. Any other questions? So if you want to submit questions, you can do it on, if you're watching this later, don't submit it on the YouTube channel, but you can text us or call us. Phone number 559-635-8266. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to show up, watch this, start investing in yourself, and I hope this helps start a transformation in your life. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. May God bless you.